What's going on, everybody? I am back. Episode number 204 of the Club and Sub podcast. Just going to be me today. Lags will be back next week, where I believe, have to confirm with him, but I think we're going to be moving to a new day. That is Sundays. As you guys can see, I still have not fixed my setup from the end of the year. Uh, going to do that this week. I've procrastinated a bit, took the holidays off, pretty much been chilling, but we are back now. We got UFC this weekend. Pretty exciting. UFC Vegas 101, I believe. Mackenzie Dern taking on Amanda Hebos 2. So I'm excited to jump into it, break it down. Hope everybody had a pretty good break. Again, sorry for the sound quality. I just did not take the time to fix it over the holidays. I just pretty much decompressed from everything. Didn't really look at Twitter much. It's been nice, but time to move on and start up with 2025. So, as always, brought to you guys by FightNumbers.com for 30% off your first month subscription there. Use the promo code CLUB, CLUB. And as always, a shout out to the fact that John Kelly runs that site. Great dude. They got sharp bets there from Ozzy and Pepe. They got his DraftKings projections, which are amazing. They have his trends tool, and they also have the live odds screen, which allows you to see live odds in real time across all books, foreign and domestic. So again, check it out. FightNumbers.com, promo code CLUB. Yeah, and with that, let's get into this card. First fight of the night. We got Joe Solecki taking on Narulo Aliev. Aliev, gigantic favorite. He is minus 600. The comeback on Solecki, plus 425. I've been looking forward to fading Aliev in the UFC. This isn't it though, I don't think. Solecki, he's had some good performances in the UFC. Very good jiu-jitsu, okay wrestler, not a great striker, but he's unfortunately the kind of fighter who, whether he wins or not, is entirely dependent on whether he can assert his game physically. When he can't, he doesn't really have an option or a plan B. You saw it against Grant Dawson. You saw it in moments in other fights against Jim Miller. He got held down for a bit. The guy just can't really get off his back. His only go-to from there is playing jiu-jitsu. And, I mean, to his credit, I do think he has a decent jiu-jitsu advantage in this fight. I actually was looking at the sub price earlier, but it's like plus 550 and his money line's plus 425. That doesn't really do much for me. And I more or less agree with that. I think it's about most of his win condition. Aliev, on the other hand, I don't think he's a great striker. I don't really trust his cardio, but he's a decent wrestler and he's pretty decent positionally on top. And he seems pretty physical and physically strong. And to me, that's kind of the whole fight here. I don't think Solecki's got fight-changing power at all. So I think Aliev can pretty much exchange with him on the feet at will. And short of catching Aliev in a guillotine or an armbar, I just don't see a whole lot of, or triangle, but I just don't see a whole lot of options for Solecki in this fight. He's probably going to get taken down. And once he is on bottom, he just doesn't have much to offer there. So, sorry, Jesus Christ. But yeah, so I think Aliev should handle him. I mean, is the price wide? Probably, but I have no real interest in getting involved here. Second fight of the night. Victoria Dakova taking on Fatima Klein. Another price that is pretty big. Fatima Klein currently, I believe, minus 900. Let's see. Yeah, minus 925. Come back on Dudakova, plus 625. I am surprised at how large a favorite Klein is in this fight. Having said that, I do think she is the much better fighter of the two. Her game's a little bit more well-rounded, slightly better boxing. I think she hits a bit harder. Probably commensurate level wrestling, but on the ground, Klein has much better jiu-jitsu than Dudakova does. Yeah, I mean, Klein's the better fighter here. I guess the issue for me is I don't think Klein is that strong of a finisher, to be honest. And if she's not that strong of a finisher and she's not, a crazy top timer, it's kind of hard to see how you can get to minus 900 in this kind of fight. So am I interested in Dudakova? Not really. I don't really rate Dudakova that highly. I don't think she's a great boxer. I think she's kind of gassy. I just feel like this could play closer than the price, but at the same time, Klein's a much better fighter. I do have interest in a bet here, though, moderately. The GTD at minus 215 kind of interests me. Klein, 2 of her 3 finishes are by knockout. I don't really see much upside to a knockout for her in this fight. I don't really think she hits that hard. She's only got 1 career submission. Now, obviously, she's got a black belt, and her, submitting Dudakova wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world. But I just don't really put it that high percentage of a chance. She fought a bunch of bums regionally, and she only had 1 submission in those fights. I'd be a little shocked if she just ran through Dakova in the grappling and submitted her. Like maybe it happens, but to me, I think putting Klein finish at like like 20% is fair, which is a reasonable amount for a women's fight. But I don't really put Dudakova finish like past like 5%, honestly. So I feel like the GTD should be like minus 300 here, not minus 215. And so I'm probably going to take a poke at that. I think it's a decent look, despite the heavy juice. I just feel like Klein, the hype around Klein is, and the money line is responsible for this GTD, but I just don't see a whole lot of finishing proclivity from her in her tape. What's going on, Jake? What's going on, Felipe? Yeah, it's good to be back. I am a little rusty here too. It's funny. I was trying to put together the stream earlier, and I was like, "What fucking site do I use again? I don't even remember." But here we are. Got to get back into the flow of things. Next fight of the night, we got Magomed Gaziasolov, I think that's how you pronounce it, taking on debutant off the Contender Series, Bruno Lopes. Good fight. It's an interesting fight. Gaziasolov, currently a moderate favorite. He's minus 210. The comeback on Lopes, plus 180. I don't feel super strong about this fight. My initial Sean asked their new headphones. No, I've had them for a while. I just haven't worn them in a minute. I usually don't because I have my normal podcast set up, but I don't have it going right now. I don't want my dog to go off barking and everybody hear it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I thought I would like Lopes pre-tape. I think he's a decent fighter. Fairly well-rounded, decent hips, solid jiu-jitsu, decent power, good calf kicks. The thing is, he is well rounded, but I don't think he's particularly good at anything by UFC standards. I also think he's got a fairly large hole once he's grounded and put on his back. I just don't see, I haven't seen much to suggest that he's going to be consistently getting off his back. On the other hand, Gaziasolov, I think he's very overhyped. Undefeated Russian. I don't think he's really deserved most of the money lines he's had in the UFC thus far, or on the Contender Series for that matter. And like I don't know, him and Lopes are pretty well matched, to be honest. Like I think in the striking, it's going to be very, very competitive. I think from a submission grappling perspective, I think Lopes is probably a bit better than he is. The issue I have though is Gaziaslov's a decent wrestler. He's not elite, but he is proactive and he's solid. And as I mentioned, I've seen Lopes get put on his back, and I don't think it's good. And I think if he gets put down here, he's probably not going to get up. And despite some concerns about Gaziaslov potentially being chinny, I do think he can get takedowns here. And to me, a proactive wrestler who I think can get takedowns against a guy who I think can't really get off his back, that's enough for me to pass this fight. As I mentioned, I do think Lopes has pretty good hips. So if he can keep the standing, I think he can definitely win this fight. Like I certainly think he's live. I just think near 67% implied for Gaziaslov. That seems about right to me, given, the upside that he's got in the grappling department. So it's a pass for me. Nothing about this fight I really like. Moving on, we have got Preston. First we got Ernesta Carisate taking on Nicole Cagliari. Current price on Carisate, minus 260 to come back on Cagliari, plus 220. There's a part of me that wants to bet Cagliari in this fight. I just, hate betting debutantes, and number two, I feel like we have a very, very small amount of data on her. Like, yeah, she looked decent in her last fight against 36-year-old Corinne Laframboise, who'd had a baby 3 months prior. I just can't really put much stock in that. I don't think her striking is any good at all. Very, very hittable. She does throw with some heat. She's decently fast and seems to have some pop to her. Her grappling, it's okay. I don't think she's a great wrestler. It's mostly clinch pitch, space takedowns, some decent jiu-jitsu. So it's like, why do I want to bet her? Well, I mean, Ernesta Carisate, she's got two assets that are great for WMA and why she'll probably stick around in the UFC for a long time. She throws a ton of volume and she's got insane cardio. And she seems to have pretty good hardware as well. So, I mean, those are the kind of fighters you don't really want to fade. But outside of those assets, I think skill for skill, Ernesta Carisate has got no plus abilities really at all. They're all minus. She has very little defense, very bad takedown defense. I think she's got pretty bad jiu-jitsu. I will say I don't think she's the easiest to hold down on the mat despite that, just because she is like kind of similar. I mean, I don't want to compare her to Brandon Royval because that's pretty disrespectful. But she is very spastic there and spazzy, which can be hard for inexperienced grapplers to control. So, I mean, that's a benefit to her, I guess. But I do think she's the kind of fighter who any well-rounded fighter who can fight for hard for 15 minutes is going to give her issues. And that's kind of where my concern is here. Because Cagliari, I could imagine a fight where Cagliari is able to just clinch her off, drag her down, and do that a bunch of times, control her, and look gigantic value in this fight. There's not a lot of great tape on Cagliari in her recent past, and she's started grappling more. We don't know what her cardio looks like. She's very, very muscle strapped, which always kind of concerns me. And obviously, not to be disrespectful, but there's a long history of, Brazilian women being similar to Carisate's last opponent, Dione Barbosa, gassing out when they use a lot of energy grappling. I think the price on Cagliari is kind of crazy. I could never lay, or on Carrasqueta is kind of crazy. I could never lay that. I am considering betting Cagliari, but I do think it's the kind of fight where Cagliari is pretty likely to have a decent amount of success early in this fight, but it could get really ugly or really sweaty on the back end if she can't keep it going. Yeah, Chandra said I have some doubts about Cagliari's motor. I completely agree, and Carrasqueta is the kind of fighter that's like she's going to either need to be clinched up with her or on top of her, because the entire time she's not, the pace is going to be getting pushed on her, which is really why I'm just not sure I want to like take a shot at it. One of the holes in my game the last year or two has been, trusting these fighters who have an obvious path to victory, but just ignoring, all the obvious question marks and flaws in their game. And we just don't know enough about Cagliari's game, in my opinion. So I'll probably pass it. I do think it's pretty obviously Cagliari or pass, though. Moving on, we got Preston Parsons taking on Jacoby Smith. This is a bit of a bummer. I had made a big bet on Parsons against Gustafsson in his original booking. I felt like Parsons deserved to be a favorite in that fight, and it was probably my most passionate take on the card. Obviously, that got canceled. Now he's fighting Jacoby Smith, also making his debut off Contender Series. Current price, Smith minus 525. Comeback on Parsons plus 400. But I have no interest in Parsons here. Jacoby Smith's a fucking hammer, man. He's one of the best. Him and the other best prospect to come off this year's Contender Series are both on this card. I think Jacoby Smith's. I think there's enough questions about what his cardio will look like against top-level UFC competition that I can't say, he's going to be a future superstar. But he's got the tools, man. The guy's a really good wrestler, very, very good athlete, pretty good control, seems to have a really good motor, and seems, from what I've seen, to have decent cardio. Parsons usually wins fights just by being tenacious and proactive about trying to grapple and just staying in your face. I just don't think he's going to be able to be more tenacious than Jacoby Smith here. He's a much worse wrestler. He's probably doesn't even have that much of an edge from a jiu-jitsu standpoint on the feet. Smith, I don't think Parsons wants to be there. I don't think Smith's going to want to be there either, to be honest. But Parsons is a punching bag. He always has been, and so I think he's pretty well covered in this fight. The one thing about it that interests me, goes a distance plus 160, kind of does. I suppose it's possible Smith decides to just keep it at distance and land bombs on him, but that's not really Smith's game. I kind of think he's going to go and out wrestle him. And while Parsons isn't a great jiu-jitsu player, I mean, he is a black belt, and I don't think he's going to be easy to sub from top position. And if that's the path Smith takes, like I know there's a bunch of tape of Smith pounding out guys on the ground, but I mean, they're mostly lower level competition. I don't think he's going to have that much easy of a time getting the dominant positions and just smashing Parsons there. So I am kind of interested in that. I think Smith wins this fight at a very, very high clip, but I also think it's going to go the distance. So I think plus 160 on the GTD is interesting to me. Moving on, we got Thiago Moises taking on Trey Ogden. Current price on Moises is minus 180. Comeback on Ogden plus 155. I bet Moises pretty big on minus 150 or at minus 150. I think he's going to fuck Ogden up, to be honest. I mean, I know all the concerns about Moises and how soft he can be if you put a lot of pressure on him, but he's just a superior fighter in just about every way in this matchup, in my opinion. On the feet, I know there's probably the view that Ogden can just outpoint him, jab and move. I just don't think that's going to work here, largely because Moises is a very, very good calf kicker, and Ogden has shown basically zero competency for dealing with calf kicks throughout his career. Those are going to be there all night for Moises. You saw the last time someone proactively tried to kick him was Ignacio Bahamondes, and Ogden basically ran from the fight, refused to engage the entire fight. If Ogden tries to exchange them in a pocket, Ogden's an okay boxer, but I think Moises is a lot more precise and throws with a lot more intent than Ogden does. And if Ogden goes the route that's been winning in fights lately, which is trying to wrestle Moises, I just think Moises is a much better scrambler than anybody he's fought in the UFC. And it's the kind of thing where, like, if Ogden gets on top of Moises, Moises can work up or get to his own dominant position. And if Moises gets on top of Ogden, I am not sure Ogden can get up. We've seen the limited footage we've seen of Trey Ogden on the ground on bottom has looked really bad to me. He's shown basically no capacity for getting off his back. Jordan Leavitt held him there for a while. That's basically how he won the fight. I think this is the market reacting to Ogden being on a nice little winning streak here. But I mean, Ogden got very close to losing to Loic Radzhabov, and in my opinion, Moises is multiple tiers above Loic Radzhabov. Being priced around the same price that Radzhabov was makes very little sense to me. I think Moises has way more finishing upside here. I think he has more decision equity here. I think he should be in like the minus 230 range personally. I'm also kind of interested in his ITD. I'm waiting to see where domestics open it. I'm seeing like plus 295 out there. I'm hoping, maybe some of the domestics will give us like plus 350, plus 400. But I love Moises here. It's my favorite spot on the card. I think he is just the superior fighter, and I just don't think Ogden is capable of duplicating, what opponents who have beaten Moises have been able to do to date. Moving on, we have Marco Tulio taking on Ihor Poteria. This fight is pretty hilarious. I don't really rate either of these guys particularly highly. Tulio is a gigantic favorite, though. Current price on him, minus 500. The comeback on Poteria, plus 375. I mean, there's a part of me that wants to bet Poteria, but he really is like one of the worst fighters on the roster by like a fairly large margin. Like very little defense, not very good cardio, not the most durable ever, not the best grappler. And while I don't think Tulio is all that skilled, he seems to have really good hardware. He's coming out of that Diego Lima camp in Brazil. Everybody that comes out of there seems to come, juiced to the gills these days and have insane cardio. Tulio seems no different. Okay grappler, nothing special. Okay striker, nothing special. Like I can see in my head the path where Poteria is able to kind of outstrike Tulio or even finish him. The problem for me is Tulio has shown in 2 contenders fights now that he's able to push the pace. I've seen nothing from Poteria to suggest he can sustain a fight at pace. I also think he's giving away a decently large hardware advantage here. So even though I don't rate Tulio, I think the physical advantages that he has here are enough that he deserves to be a big favorite. This big? I don't know. Probably not. But I've been burned by taking these flyers on these huge dogs like lately, and I'm just not really interested in doing it unless I feel passionately about it. And like to me, I can't like me clearly envisioning like what a win looks like for him is like doing something like the Burchak fight where he's able to just land more volume, land a lot of body kicks and whatnot. But I think Tulio has a lot more tools to combat that than Burchak did and can grapple him if he needs to. The only play that would really interest me is the over 1.5 at like minus 125. But even that, it's like betting it over in a Poteria fight with how aggressive he tends to be feels like a recipe for disaster, especially at favorite money. So it's probably just a pass altogether for myself. Moving on, we got Jose Johnson taking on Felipe Buunis. Current price, Johnson is minus 183. The comeback on Buunis, plus 158. I don't feel super strong here. I guess, yeah, no, I don't. I think the line's about right, honestly. I kind of lean the under. But I mean, look, on paper, Buunis has the tools to give Johnson issues, right? Jose Johnson, one of the worst defensive wrestlers in the UFC. Anybody who wants to take him down does. Buunis wants to grapple, black belt. It's kind of his game. And so I can like see why a lot of people have decided to take dog shots on him. My issue is I don't think Johnson's a super easy guy to hold down. He's another one, very, very spastic on bottom. Plus, he's gigantic for the division. And so he's always throwing up stuff off his back that kind of like gives people some issues. Even what's his name? I can't remember his name. The little Russian or the little Kazakh guy in 125 who just beat Nicolau. But either way, he could not. He was having trouble for a bit holding Johnson down. And so I think I think Buunis, I don't think there's going to be free top time for Buunis. I'll put it that way. And if there's not free top time and he's dealing with a lot of explosions off his back from Johnson, I think he can get tired. Buunis is 35 years old, fighting at 125. That's not great. He's shown, I know it's Josh Van, and I think people give him a pass for that because it's Josh Van. But like Van didn't, he gassed out in the middle of round 2 in that fight, Buunis. And Van didn't even get going until round 2 in that fight. The first round was a pretty ho-hum affair. That was pretty concerning to me how fast he cardio dumped in that fight. And I kind of think unless he's subbing Johnson early in this fight, that's pretty live to happen again. I lean the under here. I think if Buunis does gas out, he's pretty live to get subbed or get knocked out on the feet. And frankly, I think if Buunis actually looks like the side and is able to capitalize on his grappling, he's probably going to sub Johnson. I would be pretty surprised by Buunis coming out and getting 10 to 12 minutes of top time and route to a decision. So yeah, the under plus money kind of interests me. I don't know if I'll play it, but we'll see. I lean Jose Johnson to win, though. I think he's just a lot younger. Physically, he's bigger, he's longer, he's faster, more dangerous. I think you have to lean that direction. Punahele Soriano taking on Euros Medic, current price, Medic minus 210, comeback on Soriano plus 180. Another one, don't feel super strong about it. I mean, there's a part of me that wants to bet Soriano because even though Medic has shown some improved defensive grappling, I'm pretty sure Soriano is going to get takedowns in this fight if he wants them, and I imagine he will want them. But I don't know. It's very weird evaluating Puna, right? Because his whole career to date, until his last fight, had been that of a very, very gassy fighter who really would start to slow down 6 or 7 minutes into a fight. Then last fight comes out, puts out an insane pace, lands 5 takedowns, gets like 11 minutes of top time. I think he landed like 250 total strikes or something like that. Now, there's a couple things in that performance that not bother me, but like first of all, Baeza was basically a corpse past the first round. He looked awful in rounds 2 and 3, so I don't want to overrate that performance. The second thing is, was it just like, was it random? Is this a new paradigm for him from a cardio standpoint? So one thing to give Puna credence is like he did drop 15 pounds in weight, which means he's probably working out a lot harder and doing cardio. So like if his cardio is a lot better at 170, it really wouldn't shock me. But at the same time, it's like, do you really want to bet a guy with historically bad cardio who needs to wrestle to win? And then him come out and have the same cardio he's had for most of his career? I'd rather see Puna show it. On the feet, Medic is a much better striker. Puna, obviously, big hitter, fast and explosive. So if he knocks Medic out, it wouldn't shock me. But Medic should really pick him apart on the feet here. I look at it and the price, there's a lot of uncertainty in this fight. And a lot of it comes down to Puna's cardio. And to me, that the line properly captures that. Because, the truth is, Medic's get-up game has improved. So it's possible Puna's cardio could hold up, but Medic gets up and just kind of outstrikes him and route to a close decision anyway. And then there's obviously the possibility that his cardio doesn't hold up and Medic picks him apart and eventually finishes him. So I think minus 210 for Medic is fine. I think the over 1.5 and minus 150 is kind of interesting to me, though. I think most of the finishing upside early in this fight is on the Puna side. He obviously does hit very, very hard, has more than enough power to ice Medic in the first round. Medic hits hard himself, but Puna is kind of shown to be pretty durable. Like usually guys who've gotten him out of there have worked into the body like really, really badly. He seems to tank headshots pretty well. Plus, I think there's going to be a decent amount of feeling out. Medic isn't like crazy aggro, and neither is Puna really. So I kind of am interested in the over 1.5 here. In terms of a side, I mean, I think Medic is going to win. I don't really have any interest in a bet there, though. Moving on, banger fight here. Austin Bashi taking on Christian Rodriguez. In my opinion, Bashi is the best prospect to come off Contender Series last year. It's funny because I went into tape thinking I would almost definitely be betting Christian Rodriguez in this fight. And I came out of tape thinking the line's probably right, honestly. I understand why a lot of folks are taking the shot on Rodriguez. Obviously, the guy's won a bunch of fights against grapplers already in his time in the UFC. He's much more experienced than Bashi is. He's older than Bashi is. But I look at the fight, and ultimately I think he's like, yeah, I mean, if they're on the feet, Rodriguez is certainly the better boxer. He is a decent scrambler, so it might not be easy for Bashi to control him or take him down. But I mean, looking past that, just about every guy that's wanted to take Christian Rodriguez down in his career so far has. And I look at Austin Bashi and I tape this guy's regional footage, and the guy reminds me of literally like an American Marab Bosch, really. Very young and very raw, to be fair. Like he's only 23. I don't think he's at that level yet. But like that's the kind of game like he brings, He is a very, very high volume wrestler, lands a ton of takedowns, attempts a ton of takedowns, doesn't seem to slow down. He's been 5 rounds multiple times where he's still attempting loads of takedowns deep into round 5. In the jiu-jitsu, I actually think jiu-jitsu is pretty good. He's got a pretty good body triangle game, and we've seen Christian Rodriguez kind of give up those positions in the past to a number of guys. Now, obviously, his back kicks aren't anywhere near the level of Raul Rosas, but I could see him duplicating some of what like Jonathan Pierce did to him. But even if he can't control Rodriguez, it's like, okay, do you think Rodriguez is going to sub him? I mean, that could happen. And if Rodriguez does sub him, I mean, that's one of his best paths to victory, in my opinion. But if he doesn't sub him, what's probably going to happen is he's still not going to get that much time and space. Like the problem, I've seen a few people, or I've had a few people tell me that like Bulgarian, was like a big statement fight. And it's like, well, was it though? Like Bulgarian gassed out badly, and that's why he won. Bulgarian, for the first 8.5, 9 minutes of that fight, took him down at will with zero issues at all. Jonathan Pierce took him down at will with very few issues at all. Bashi's a really good wrestler who's got much better cardio than Bulgarian has. Is he as good on top as Bulgarian? No, he's not. But I don't think he needs to be. Like, look at Marab. How many guys has Marab controlled on top over the years? The ability to clinch someone up, get back control, and take them down 7, 8 times in a fight is kind of just a cheat code for winning fights at this level. And again, I'm not saying Rodriguez can't win this fight. I just favor Bashi enormously on minutes here, given his wrestling ability and his cardio. And I feel like Rodriguez finishing equity just isn't that high. Maybe I'm underrating his ability to snatch a guillotine or Bashi's jiu-jitsu, or overrating Bashi's jiu-jitsu. That's possible. But I think all things being equal, he's going to take Rodriguez down a ton in this fight, and Rodriguez is going to have a hard time separating from him. So I lean Bashi. I don't really like anything on the fight. Look, I can't bet minus 270 on a debutante. There's about a million reasons to not want to bet him here. Is he going to have jitters? No one knows. Will he cardio dump early? No one knows. Will he make a couple of rookie mistakes? Very possible. But I do think, him being a decent sized favorite is fair. Moving on, we got Chris Curtis taking on Roman Kopilov. Current price, Kopilov minus 251. The comeback on Curtis plus 211. I am not sure what to do with this, honestly. I am debating betting Chris Curtis here. I'm a bit nervous because Chris Curtis is 37 years old. Chris Curtis has a tendency to take pictures, and if you just play an outside game against him, you can just get off free volume. And that was my thought going into tape on the fight too. But then I looked at it, it's like Kopilov, he doesn't really implement the kind of game plan that like a Joaquin Buckley or a Jack Hermanson does. That's not, those guys, like you look at the Hermanson fight, Hermanson was just looking to land jab, body kick, and get out of there. There's not really exchange with them at all. Even the Buckley fight, Buckley was doing something similar. Land a combination, exit. And those kind of guys give Curtis a ton of issues because he wants to counter, he wants to sit down in his shots and counter in the pocket with you. And if you move on him and you can fight on the move, he just doesn't really have the footwork to deal with that. But like when you watch Kopilov, that's not really his game against anybody. Like Kopilov, even when he's fought power strikers, he wants to Kopilov wants to land damage. He doesn't want to point fight. He wants to get in there, land big kicks, and land heavy, heavy hands on you. And so I don't really think him out footworking Curtis for 15 minutes is at all likely, to be honest. But even, but having said that, I do think early in this fight, Curtis is going to have a ton of issues. He's giving up a huge speed disadvantage here to Kopilov. Like Kopilov is just so much faster, and he's much more precise in tight than Curtis is. On top of which, Curtis's tendency to like not keep his hands up when he's exchanging and just try to roll shots. It works out for him well. He does it effectively, but he's eating some heavy shots that way. Plus, he's getting older and he's taking more damage. Like I have a feeling that that Kopilov is going to wobble and or hurt him bad early in this fight and potentially finish him. Just because I think the early exchanges between these two, Kopilov is going to win them pretty handily. However, if he can clear the early minutes of this fight, and I mean, he's only been knocked out once in his career, so it's very possible. I do think Curtis can start to take over, though. I think the body work's going to affect Kopilov in a big way. And I think as Kopilov's speed starts to slow down, Curtis can start finding a home for his counters in a big way. And potentially pump Kopilov down the stretch. Now the question is, does that worth a poke? And I'm debating it. I haven't really decided yet, just because I do think Curtis is going to win round 3 at a decent clip, and I do think Kopilov is going to win round 1 at a large clip. I just don't really know when that cardio pivot will happen, especially because so much of what Curtis does is dependent on his opponent. That like Kopilov can probably pace himself, and when he attacks, it's not like he's going to be under constant fire in the way he was against, say, like Anthony Hernandez. So we'll have to see. I kind of think the best way to play Curtis is play him live here. Let's just look to play him after round 1, because I think he's probably going to lose round 1 in a big clip, and maybe tag on like 2-3 KO. I haven't seen what the prices are for that yet, but I am moderately interested in that, just taking pokes at those. But yeah, I lean Curtis, I guess, at the price. It's an interesting fight, though. It is a very, very interesting fight. Moving on, we got Abdul Razak Alhassan taking on Cesar Almeida. Current price on Almeida minus 275. Comeback on Alhassan plus 235. Price seems ridiculous, if I'm being honest. I don't really understand. I mean, I do understand the line. Like, Almeida's a much better striker than Alhassan, like, no doubt about it. The problem is Almeida gets hit. Like, he's not, again, this is not a guy who's going to point fight on the outside and avoid it. He mixes it up every fight with his opponents and is happy to bite down and swing in the pocket with them. And with that being the case, even though he's a better striker than Razak, and I'd expect him to land more volume than Razak, um, Razak hits hard as fuck, man. The guy is absolutely cracks. His KO equity alone probably makes the price a tad on the wide side. He's probably got a decent amount of moment upside. If anybody's going to land a takedown or two, it's probably going to be Razak. Although I'll say this, I've seen some say that, he should grapple. And it's like Razak Alhassan does not have the cardio to come out and grapple for 15 minutes. Like, there's just no way that's going to happen. But I just feel like you're asking, I know Alhassan's old, but you're asking 36-year-old Cesar Almeida to come out here and put on a clean striking performance, even though he didn't put on the cleanest performance against Poteria in his last fight. And you think that that's worth minus 275? I mean, maybe it is, but I don't know, man. I think the price is a little on the wide side. I'm debating betting Razak. Again, I'm trying to avoid betting these old guys, but I just think given Razak's, firepower and his KO equity, it's like it wouldn't take that much for him to knock him out, or for his firepower lead to a much lower volume fight where he only needs to land a couple big shots around to swing the fight. We don't really know. I lean the Alhassan side here. I think the price is really, really dumb. Moving on, we got Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Carlston Harris. Current price, Ponzinibbio minus 126. Come back on Harris plus 106. I was really interested in Pons when he was a dog, but I didn't tape it in time, and I don't really want to play him as a favorite. Honestly, like, this is a fight Ponzinibbio should win fairly comfortably, in my opinion, just via being a better fighter. Carlston Harris, a janky striker who's very, very easy to hit, and shouldn't say very chinny, but he's certainly not durable. I think the wrestling dynamic, even though that's probably the obvious path for Harris, won't necessarily be easy for him. Like, most of Harris's wrestling tends to be to the upper body, and Ponzinibbio is not an easy guy to wrestle, nor is he historically an easy guy to hold down. So, I mean, I could see Harris landing a takedown or two, maybe three, but I'd be a little surprised if he kept him down. And on the feet, I just think Pons is a much better striker than he is. Having said that, the reason I'm not laying minus 125 is I have like real worries about where Pons is durability wise at this point. His cardio didn't look nearly as good in his last fight with Salikov as it has for his career. His durability seems to be just going to absolute shit. Like he's getting hurt almost every fight. We saw Alex Morono hurt him multiple times in their fight. He's been knocked out in the recent past. Like, I think it's pretty clear he's had a ton of health issues. I think it's very clear that Ponzinibbio is nowhere near his peak. So I think he's the better fighter. But do you want to catch the falling knife here and wager on him to not get knocked out by Harris? Now, Harris isn't exactly a slick striker, but he does have some pop, and he is big and he is long. So that happening really wouldn't shock me. Or alternatively, like I said, he's clearly a declining fighter. Maybe he does show up and, his hips are gone and Harris is able to just take him down and maul him. We don't really know. I think pricing Pons a small favorite here, given the dynamic and given the skill gap, is fair. But I think there's a whole lot of negative macro on the Pons side that I don't really want to steer into at this point in his career. Moving on, we got the main event. Mackenzie Dern taking on Amanda Ribas. Current price, Ribas minus 189, comeback on Dern plus 164. Similar to a lot of fights on this card, I like the GTD here. I think that is the best spot on this fight. In terms of the fight itself, I mean, look, they fought once, but I think it's a totally useless fight to watch back. I think you can just throw it out completely. I mean, Dern's striking is so bad in that fight. It's honestly comedy, and it's clear she's made huge improvements. So, like, I don't think you can put much into it or put much into that. But even watching them in recent years, it's very clear that Ribas is a much better striker than Dern. She can be hittable, but she throws a lot more volume. She's faster. She's much, much more precise. And I think she's got a little bit better cardio, to be honest. So like on the feed, I think Ribas over 25 minutes, I'd expect to comfortably, semi-comfortably anyway, outstrike Dern. I do think, I mean, look, everybody knows Ribas is pretty chinny for a 115-pound woman. So there's obviously some knockout and big moment upside for Dern. I just don't think Dern's going to find those shots like that easily. So, but it could happen. Like I think that's pretty in play. Um, the big question here is the grappling in this fight. Can Dern get takedowns? I think I'd expect her to land like a takedown or two over 25 minutes. I think that's pretty fair. She's going to go for them. Her wrestling's obviously gotten better, but it's obviously still not very good. And so I think Ribas can mostly keep it on the feet. Yeah, I mean, I guess when I'm thinking about the fight, I just feel like Dern is going to need either moments or she's going to need early round takedowns where she gets Ribas flat because Ribas flat tends to just give up time on her back. If she can do that, she can win the fight. But in the aggregate, I think Ribas is the better fighter by a fair amount and should win this fight. The reason I like GTD is I give Ribas almost no finishing equity in this fight, to be honest. Like I know she knocked out Luana Pinheiro, but Pinheiro was totally death gassed. That was really more even though she hit that 6 spinning back kick, that was really more nutritional stoppage than anything else. I don't think she's going to get Dern in that position. I don't give her almost any chance to sub Dern. Like it could happen, but I don't think it's all that likely. Like I think Ribas finishing equity is probably like 5% here. And on the Dern side, I don't give maybe 15, maybe 20%. Could she sub Ribas? Yeah, I mean she could. It's a possibility that she could sub Ribas. But Ribas is a super high level black belt herself, and so I think it's very, very unlikely she does. Verna got Ribas down once while she was fresh and didn't get close to really doing anything with it. So like I'd be surprised if Dern subbed Ribas. And even with a KO, it's like, could Dern knock her out? Yeah, but like Dern has, what does she have, one UFC knockout? Or does she have any UFC knockouts? I know she dropped Amanda Bobby Cooper. Yeah, no, she has no UFC knockouts. So like, yeah, Dern hits reasonably hard for a woman, and maybe she wobbles her and jumps on something. Maybe she knocks her out. It could happen. I just don't think it's very high percentage at all. Like, even if you want to put Dern, finish at 20% and Ribas at 10%, that still should be like minus 230 to the goes the distance there. So that's kind of like, maybe I'm misreading it, but that's kind of my thought on the fight. It seems pretty obvious to me that, the finishing equity for each isn't really all that high. So yeah, I'm going to play the GTD there. Only money line I have right now is Thiago Moises. I might add Curtis, but I think he's probably better live. I don't love this card that much, but I'm glad we're back. Lags and I will be back on next week. I think the plan, tentatively, and I'll confirm this on Twitter, is to start doing these on Sunday night. Get out there early in the week. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back next week. I'll have my normal setup back, so it looks way less janky. Happy 2025. Hope you guys have an amazing new year with your families. And yeah, let's get it. Hopefully we win this weekend. Drop a like, subscribe. Peace.